Also, our sportsbook reviews over there. I tell you all the time, very, very important for you to be able to shop around. And keep in mind, too, we're still talking a lot of football, but the NBA starts here next week. Those half points really, really matter in the NBA. College basketball, not that far away. Half points really matter there as well. So you want to be able to shop around for the best prices. Check out those sportsbook reviews. See if you find a sportsbook that works for you. Of course, that sportsbook could be DSI Sportsbook, where you can use the promo code BTB and the number 25 to get a $25 free bet just for signing up, a 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook, and a 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino as well over there at BetDSI, where it's only a game until you bet it. Two guests coming your way here today. The first, Mr. Joe Everett from NFL Draft Bible. Joe, how's it going today, buddy?
Rough weekend. 6-7-2 in college. My NFL is sitting at 3-3, so I'm just ready to kind of wipe the slate clean, get the pencils sharpened, and get ready for next week. Get my butt kicked out there, Adam.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it seemed like it was a tough weekend for a lot of people. I had 9.5 points of closing line value on Idaho from grabbing the bet online opener, plus I think the actual opener was 3.5, but I got it at 3 minus 120. Had 9.5 points of line value, and it never came close. So, hey, I mean, I guess it was maybe just one of those weeks for a lot of people out there. I know a lot of people struggle with the college card. Then the NFL card, I mean, I know that we usually kick off with our Monday Night Football preview, and we'll do that here in a second. But the NFL card for week 5, I mean, you had Chargers-Giants close 3, Bills-Bengals close 3. You had Baltimore and Oakland close 3. Several games below 3, Jets and Browns, Titans and Dolphins, 49ers and Colts, Lions and Panthers, Rams and Seahawks, Packers and Cowboys, Chiefs and Texans. I mean, it was one of those weeks where you just had a lot of coin flip games. You had a lot of 55-45 types of games. And there's going to be variance in a lot of those situations, and it was just one of those weekends in the NFL. And then, of course, you look ahead to the next week, and we're going to have probably 7 favorites of a touchdown or more. So, it's just life in betting the NFL, right?
Yeah, and it's just sometimes a never fail. You seem to find those games. I know I did. If it was the Lions game, and Matt Stafford brings it right down to it. Still a no-go there. And, just when you think you have something, like a nice lead in the Rams, Seahawks, and, yeah, the NFL just does a great job of turning things upside down on you.
7 might be a little bit high. It might be 6. Right now we've got 5, and then we're still waiting on the line for Chicago and Baltimore here with the Bears, of course, playing tonight on Monday Night Football. But you got to figure Mitch Trubisky going on the road against that Baltimore defense, Joe Flacco looking a lot better. That number is probably a touchdown, possibly higher. And, of course, Chicago, this is the first time they've played a game where the spread hasn't been around a touchdown. So, wouldn't really be a big surprise to see that number come out here for Sunday. But let's go ahead and talk about the Chicago Bears. They host the Minnesota Vikings here tonight at Soldier Field. Chicago now a 3.5-point dog. We see a 4 out there at Bovada, which obviously, again, one of the more public shops out there. So public money very one-sided here on Minnesota. Looks like we got some sharp involvement on the Vikings as well in Mitch Trubisky's first, and not even just first start, but first NFL appearance.
Yeah, it's the unveiling of Mr. Biscuit here, and I think we're going to see a lot of kind of what we saw with Deshaun Watson, and I think also that's really the crux of this. Once Deshaun Watson put 57 on Tennessee, the Green Lantern was lit in the Bears locker room. It's like, well, we've got to get our rookie out there. It just seems a little early here. Going up against Minnesota, like I said, what we saw with Watson, really simple cadences, nothing too complex pre-snap, and I don't even know how many reads. It's really going to be interesting how Tariq Cohen gets used in this. It's a tough ask. I mean, I don't want to bore the listeners here, but they've got great cornerbacks. They've got a great defensive line. This whole thing is stacked. 2 safeties, I believe, are studs. Back there, and the Harrison Smith, and then a very underrated Andrew Sendejo. I don't think people give him enough credit. And then Kendricks and Barr at linebacker, that back to the stud factory. So Tariq Cohen, they'll get creative. They'll use the crap out of Jordan Howard here. But like I said, this is a really, on that side of the ball, Bears on offense with a rookie, there could be some turnovers here. I guess potential X factor is maybe Adam Shaheen and these tight ends. That's one thing they do have a strength in. There's a lot of guys that can play there, and Shaheen This is a wide body. He's a tough cover. That's I don't care if you've got a safety or a corner or a backer. There's just a lot of dude in Shaheen there. So I'd say that's an X factor. And there's not really on that side of the ball, a premium matchup. I guess it's Cohen versus Eric Kendricks. That chess match between Zimmer and Dowell Loggins. Just how they use chicken salad, and I mean that is the one advantage the Bears do have. Should he be matched up on Terrence Newman, like an old nickel like him, or maybe the backup safety Anthony Harris in a nickel package or a sub package look, that's where Cohen might be able to get loose. But I think there's just a couple of other advantages on the other side of the ball with the Vikings. I mean, unfortunate here, Dalvin Cook was just going to be a star tonight. Would he have been healthy? That's what's sad. And there's going to be a void left in this scheme, but I don't really care if Bradford plays or not. The Stefan Diggs show is going to be in full effect tonight. It's Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan, Prince Amukamara, whoever's out there. I don't think they're running with Diggs. And the safety group is getting there in Chicago, but they're hurt. I think Quentin Demps, but he still might be banged up. So if it's Amos, they've got a beatable safety there, and then Danny Trevathan, it's just a one-game suspension, but this is that one game. And if you think about it, a linebacker, Jarrell Freeman's been out. I think he tore his pec, and then Nick Kwiatkowski's got an arm injury. We're looking at linebackers 4 and 5 out there trying to run around in space. That's going to be, I think, a liability for the Chicago defense. And then on that side of the ball, your primo matchups, Leonard Floyd versus Riley Reif, that's one to watch. I think getting Reif for the Vikings, that's a great acquisition. That was a huge problem last year, and that's a GM finally answering issues that were clear. And then how the Vikings are going to block Akeem Hicks is another question mark I've got. I just don't think one man can do it. If it's Pat Elflein, Joe Berger, they're going to have to use both those guys to stop the force of nature that is Akeem Hicks on the inside. So that's a guy that could wreck some stuff for the Bears.
You know, I think that there are a lot of hard things to try and handicap about this game, and obviously you have to try and figure out what Mitch Trubisky is going to do if you want to take Chicago north of the key number, and you can do that now. And you can do it at reasonable juice as well. You don't have to buy off the 3 or anything like that. You're getting 3.5 flat, 3.5 minus 108 at BetOnline right now. But, you know, I'm kind of curious to see what Chicago does from an offensive game plan standpoint. I mean, the weather looks like it's going to be fine, which is a good thing because weather was kind of a factor here in a few different games over the weekend. But you have to take the top off this defense. You have to let Trubisky throw the ball downfield, see what happens. Now, of course, Chicago doesn't really have the personnel at wide receiver to do that right now. So I don't know if you line Cohen up in the slot, run a seam route with him, something like that, just to try and do something to loosen up this defense a little bit, because Minnesota's going to be coming. They're going to be flooding the box. They're going to expect Dowell Loggins to probably hand the ball off a lot. But Loggins is a very creative guy. Chicago's had extra prep time here because they played the Thursday night game in week 4. So they've had a few extra days to incorporate some things into the playbook. So, you know, maybe they do get a little bit aggressive. Maybe you do play with a little bit of house money. Go ahead and see what Trubisky can do throwing the ball deep. On the other side, you know, you've got this Vic Fangio defense that's been playing very, very well for Chicago this year. But you also have the return of Sam Bradford here for Minnesota. At least by all accounts, it looks like he's going to be able to play. Now, I don't know how big the difference is between Case Keenum and Sam Bradford from a spread standpoint. It looks like it's maybe a point and a half, something like that. But you have to think that without Dalvin Cook, it's much better to have Sam Bradford out there than Case Keenum. So what do you think about the total in this game? I mean, I feel like that is even up for pretty high level of variance here in this game.
Well, I could see points, and I agree with you that the Bears have to take shots. You can't let them just plow down in that box and live there and kill your run off. So they're going to take some short slants, but they will take their shots with guys like Deontay Thompson. Yeah, with Bradford being back in, though, that's just a plus. And if someone wanted to then look at that total as a feasible over, I think that's something, because talk about the weakness at corners, and yes, Stephon Diggs is special, but Adam Thielen and Bradford have a great chemistry going. I think that's the difference that's in there. Not saying that Thielen didn't do well with Keenum, but they definitely are on the same page, and both of those receivers going against this cornerback group. I really still believe, even if it is a downgrade with Keenum, he was getting the job done just as well. I think because it's just that same system, the same scheme coming in from last year, and both these guys, these receivers are on just playing at a really high level. So, yeah, if someone's looking at a total, I would not argue against it.
Well, and of course, without Dalvin Cook, I mean, who's going to run the football for Minnesota? Latavius Murray, 14 carries for 38 yards this year. Jerick McKinnon, 10 carries, 26 yards. So maybe you do some jet sweep stuff with Stephon Diggs, but this is going to be, that offense that Pat Shurmur is kind of comfortable with running in terms of using these short passes and some swing stuff as an extension of the running game. I mean, it hurts not to have Dalvin Cook, not to have that balance. But, I mean, Bradford, this is a game where Minnesota's probably going to win, should be ahead throughout most of the game, I would think. And it would not shock me at all if Bradford throws the ball 45 times in this game, just because they don't have anyone to run the rock. So, I think in that respect, too, when you look at it from an over standpoint, could see some clock stoppages, could see, both teams throwing the ball somewhere upwards around 80, 85 times in this game. If the Bears have to throw, they could be in that position. So I don't know. I feel like it's challenging because it's Monday Night Football. I know people want to bet it, but this feels like a high variance game to me.
Exactly. And I'd agree that they're just going to manufacture runs on Minnesota. We'll see a lot of Jerick McKinnon screens. It'll look like Andy Reid's old offense in Philadelphia where the fans are screaming run, but he throws the check down again, and that's just how they're going to have to work around it. But it is a game that could go a number of ways. Akeem Nicks could break through this line and wreck Sam Bradford. I think, just like I said on the other side of the ball, too, like they're just turnovers could be in abundance here with that Vikings offense going against a rookie. It's just there's so many different directions I see. It's I don't know. It's like likely a game I'll be sitting out.
Last thing I'll ask you out here, I know you and I are both big fans of Dowell Loggins. Based on the limited sample size that we've seen with him as an offensive coordinator and then some of the work that he did as the quarterback's coach under Kyle Shanahan, are he and Mitch Trubisky a good fit together? I mean, is this something that, long-term should be a good working relationship?
I believe so. I mean, they wanted a quarterback who could operate in the pro system. They wanted a guy that could take snaps. He's shown he can do that, and that's the ball of clay they chose. I mean, they traded up to do it. So, obviously, in those interviews, not only did the coaching staff, but Loggins specifically had to sit down with him and say, yeah, this is a kid I can work with. So, I'm positive they've got a good working relationship to start. I mean, we'll see how this progresses, but he's a scheme fit. I think he's right there, and he was a little rough around the edges as far as how many games he had started, but with the actual tools he's got to work with, I think he was definitely a lot closer than a guy like Pat Mahomes, who was another first round. I mean, the athletic ability's there, but dialing up plays in the huddle, just spitting out the verbiage. I think he was very much further along than a guy like that. And it's still, there's a reason he didn't start. I mean, there's some things he can't do. This will be what would you call a diluted or watered down playbook. But, yeah, I think it's going to work out eventually. And just for the simple fact that it has to be better than what Glennon was putting out there. Some of these elaborate releases, the elongated delivery, that's why the batted passes were happening. It's there's a reason this guy's been kind of shuffled around here and kind of laughable now at NC State. The Wolfpack, oh, sorry, Russell Wilson, we're going to have to send you packing your bags. We're going with this guy called Mike Glennon, and I dare say they'd love to have that one back.
Yeah, for sure. And, of course, things don't get any easier for Trubisky next week, taking on Baltimore on the road. Minnesota takes on Green Bay. So that'll be an interesting number to see based on what happens here tonight. But let's take a look back at a very interesting NFL Sunday in Week 5. Let's start with the game between Pittsburgh and Jacksonville. And this is one I had on my Super Contest card, largely because I thought the number just looked high in this game, with Jacksonville getting more than a touchdown. They were playing their third straight road game, including a trip to London, but it didn't really seem to matter. I mean, in the second half, Jacksonville, the much fresher team, outscored Pittsburgh 23-3 in the second half of this one. Comes away with an easy 30-9 victory. What did you see in this game?
Some bad football, clearly, but I'm seeing a storyline already that I think might be a little out of control. The downfall of Ben Roethlisberger and this new-look Jaguars, Saxonville, they love to call him, but I think it's just possibly the worst game by a really good player. I don't think Ben should retire, and I think people just on the surface are going to see 5 interceptions and 30-9, and yeah, Steelers are dead in the water. I just think that the bottom line is Jacksonville did a good job. They did what they're supposed to do. Jalen Ramsey, he allowed one big 49-yard gainer, but outside of that, I thought he did a really good job on some of those Antonio Brown deep routes. The Jags have that defensive line. They've worked on that. Should be a strength, so finally it's a strength. Good for them. And Leonard Fournette, as advertised, just a big old kid. It's hard to tackle. Like I said, Jags throw the ball a little bit much, and I think the one thing that really peppers this in people's minds is the post-game press conference where Ben was short with reporters. Oh, no, I'm not playing well enough. And even before the next question's out, maybe I just don't have it anymore. And then before anyone asks another question, I'm not playing well enough. They're just so short and rejecting. And you don't see a pro doing that. So I think a lot of people are convinced it's mental. But I once again, I think he's surrounded by a few me-first guys. This is frustrating him. This is one of his toughest days ever. And 2 of those interceptions, I'm here to tell you they weren't his fault. One tipped pass that just caromed off the side of a defender's arm and goes right into Telvin Smith because he's trying to beat just in front of that linebacker window to get Antonio Brown on a quick slant. And it's just, once the timing's just undone, then, yeah, unfortunately that one went for a pick 6. The other one, Ben's trusting his man. Sure, he's throwing into double coverage to Antonio Brown, but how many times has AB bailed him out? And unfortunately this time, Jalen Ramsey, again, got a little bit of a tip, popped it in the air. Barry Church takes it the other way for 6. So I'm looking at a game that could have been just an ugly 16-9 struggle fest for the Steelers. Yes, I'm worried about Steelers offense, but I would caution people to get carried away with this whole thing. And, it's just tough. I mean, another interception. Juju Smith-Schuster falls down in the middle of his route. I think it probably still would have been a pick whether or not he falls down, but the confidence is a little shaken, yes. But this is still a good team. This is still a good quarterback, and I don't know. I think people get a little carried away with the end of Ben Roethlisberger. We're at week 5. Things might just bounce back against the Chiefs next Sunday or Monday, whenever they're playing. That's their next game. I would be calling for a bit of a bounce back from the Steelers. I think they just hit rock bottom, and as we know in stocks, it's just the right time to jump on a team. They're still talented. There's not a lot of injuries. It's just right now they need to get nose to the grindstone. And speaking of people who need to sharpen their pencils, Todd Haley, make the adjustments. I think that's the real crux of this. And I'm looking at a team that's about to just bounce back in a big way, I think.
Well, right now, Kansas City, a 4-point favorite against Pittsburgh on Sunday. This number actually just popped as you were talking there, and this is one that I didn't have in the opening line report over at BangTheBook.com, but I will be adding it here after the show because there wasn't a line when I posted that article. But a couple things here. One is that Ben kind of hinted at retirement after last season. I mean, this is a guy that's taken a beating. He's had a lot of lower half injuries. He plays through pretty much every injury that he has as long as he can go out there and either throw the football or walk. So, I give him credit for that. I think from a tenacity standpoint, this is a guy that's earned that right, that if he wants to walk away from the game while he can still maneuver a little bit, I can't blame him for that. So I think that this is also coming from, something that he kind of thought about heading into last offseason is, how much longer do I want to do this? How much longer do I want to be out there taking shots? And then the other thing you brought up, and I think it's a really good point, is that me first thing with, a guy like Le'Veon Bell, who obviously was, holding out, and then Antonio Brown, a guy that you better give me the football. And I mean, his play, certainly supports his personal beliefs on giving him the football. But, he's got Bell and Brown, and then a collection of not really a whole lot else. And he knows it. And I also think, too, and I'm certainly not going to get political at all here on this show. I have no interest in ever doing that unless we're talking about politics odds. But this is a Pittsburgh locker room right now where there are some problems. I mean, you talk about Bell holding out and the team getting off to a little bit of a slow start. You talk about how they haven't given Antonio Brown a good enough compliment. You've got the whole thing with the national anthem with Villanueva out there. Nobody else goes. Ben says, hey, maybe we should have went out there. Probably pisses off some of his teammates. And when you're not having fun in a situation like that, and you come out and throw 5 picks in a game, yeah, you may say some things that you want to take back on Monday or Tuesday, but also I think because Ben has gone this route before and mentioned it last season, there may be a little bit more to it than that. And I mean, he's had problems with Todd Haley before. Who knows if he's having problems with Mike Tomlin now? I just feel like there's a little bit more fire here than just smoke.
No, I would agree on the locker room aspect, and not even being political. Let's get together and have a kumbaya moment because they all need to get into a circle and talk this out, hash it out, do whatever it takes. I think that's part of it. But also, even the hinting towards retire, like Ben's always kind of been that prima donna. He loves attention. He will wear a different colored shoe when he's injured just so that he's injured. Oh, well, look at that. He's toughing it out with a size too big shoe. But why couldn't we make it black to match his other one? Because he wants you to know how hurt he is. And how many times did Brett Favre hint at retirement towards the end? I think this is kind of, almost standard quarterback, like just give me some more attention, even though I could see him playing even next year. So I don't know that. I guess that's one thing that frustrates me. People are like, "Well, he's gonna retire." It's like might not retire, but I would agree with you. There is a bit of a locker room where there's smoke, there's fire. They're definitely not on the same page there. And if there's anything, like I said, just behind closed doors, players only meeting, whatever it takes, there's just a little too much talent here to be playing this poorly. And I just would look for the value in Pittsburgh once they're, I think we're really close to rock bottom here.
That's an interesting point about Ben. I mean, obviously, growing up in Cleveland and being a Browns fan and not being a Browns fan, but being around Browns coverage, I guess I should say, and seeing, all of this soap opera and this odyssey play out with Roethlisberger. I think you make an excellent point, too, in that, this is a guy that wants you to know what he's playing through. And I think that's a really good point to make here, too. And it's one of those things where, from a line value standpoint, you're probably going to get some on Pittsburgh going forward here. From a perception standpoint, you're probably going to get some value out of that as well. But again, I mean, we don't know how deep these problems run. And, do you want to bet on 3 guys on offense to carry the load like they have for the last several years? Problems may run deep, and they may all be at the core of the problem. I don't know. I think that's a really interesting thing to try and look at here. Steelers will probably be a team I'll stay away from or fade, but I also understand, where you're coming from, Joe, in that this team is not as bad, as this one-game sample would suggest. And, you do like to zig when everybody else zags, and that could be the situation here against the Kansas City team this week that is obviously playing some very, very good football here this season. All right, let's talk about the Washington Redskins a little bit here. I know you wanted to touch on them, a team that, as you put it here, one, taking a week off. What do you mean by that?
Well, just the rest of the division, specifically what the Giants lost, and the Cowboys losing, and just kind of sitting back, being able to analyze the opponent. Obviously, the Eagles, hey, they look solid. Carson Wentz is what he is. He's a big athletic kid. He's just doing so well surviving in the pocket. So excited to see what he's done. But the Eagles have problems at corner. I mean, they're not exactly balanced on offense, a lot of big shots. And the little underlying thing, I'm watching Jason Peters not play very well at left tackle right now. I'm hoping that's a one-game kind of struggle there. Lane Johnson injured in this last game. And then the Giants in the attack of the slant passes, well, if that offense loses all its wide receivers, there's no more slant passes. The Beckham injury by itself is just saddening because that's such a rare breed. You don't want to see a football sexy on the ground screaming in pain. That's the worst thing about this game because a guy like that is just such a game changer. And what he means, this whole offense is built around him. This set of skills that he's got, we've talked about it before. Like I was really jacked up that Odo was kind of closer to 100% from that preseason injury because, hey, they could turn things around, but now they're a rudderless boat in the middle of the ocean. It doesn't matter where they go. They're just going to be paddling. And the Cowboys, I think they're showing the whole league how bad they are at linebacker without Sean Lee. Those cornerbacks are still a problem. Chidobe Awuzie, another injury. I don't know what he's going to contribute this year, and possibly one of the dumber coaches in the league, Jason Garrett. They're just running per clip on the Packers. Ezekiel Elliott's eating his porridge, everything's going right, and he starts throwing the ball, leaving time on the clock for Mike McCarthy. I just think the rest of this division, not only they showing some holes, but it's one thing I didn't get to touch at the last game from Washington. I hate to use that term, a confidence-building win, or confidence-building loss, moral victory, say what you want. They had one. I mean, they really have shown some things in the pass rush. Josh Doctson may not have converted that touchdown, but that athletic ability is what they've been waiting for, what they drafted him in the first round to do, and just him showing those flashes, like, kid, if you can contribute this year, we may have something. Jay Gruden's another guy. I don't know about his in-game management, but this Washington offense is going to be just fine. Kirk Cousins, they've got great experience there. This is another quarterback just playing the same daggone scheme he's played for the last few years. I like what they've got going in Washington. Really good line. I think they're sitting pretty in this division. A lot of people might not realize it just because they took the week off, but if there's any team that is just sitting there with a smile on their face on the couch off the bye week, it's the Redskins.
All right, let's move to the Carolina Panthers here, and they beat the Detroit Lions, went on the road, avoided yet another magical Detroit comeback in the fourth quarter, which is pretty much, it seems like that's the only thing that the Lions can do nowadays is, make games interesting in the fourth quarter, and they'll either win it by a score or lose it by a score. But one of the things I've had a hard time trying to figure out about this game, and I did have the Lions in the Super Contest, went 3-2 this week, is that I'm trying to figure out, is this game, a better indication of Carolina, or is this game a bigger indictment on the Detroit Lions? Because Carolina, was up 27-10 in this game after three quarters. So they had pretty much packed it away. They were in very, very good shape. And you sit there and you think to yourself, okay, if you just look at the score, Carolina probably had to be nice and balanced in this game. Probably we're getting things going with the ground game. That was not the case. 28 carries, 28 yards. But Cam Newton, 26 of 33, 355, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, this dude's back, right?
I think so, and I just have to admit it. I was wrong. I wouldn't be any good to the listeners or doing anything good for the show if I didn't admit mistakes and just misdiagnosis. I think it was 3 weeks ago I'm on the show talking about how it looks like an Army offense for Carolina, and Cam's shoulder won't let him do anything but check down and pitch out. And right before this game on Sunday, I'm hearing reports of how Cam Newton's been able to practice these last 2 weeks. The chemistry he's developed is what allowed them to beat the Patriots. Like, okay, show me, prove it to me. And just watching the Cam cut-ups from this last game, it was pretty impressive, and it proves to me that now this offense, some of the things they are still running some pitch-out option stuff. That some of the packages they run are looking like a Navy offense. And Ed Dixon is your budget Greg Olson, but some of the throws, man, the first quarter, that was the first one where I think I had to believe it because he's off his back foot, far hash, all the way to the opposite sideline. It was just 20 yards, but he put the thing on a rope. Then he hits Dixon twice right down the middle of the field. Another touch pass on a lob where he just took it off and it was the perfect throw, right, for the situation, what it demanded. And then I think the sideline pass to Kelvin Benjamin for the touchdown was the nail in my coffin for being wrong. He just put it on a line right at the flag, and he threw Benji open. There was it's not even about, he put it in a spot. He just threw it outside of the zone. No, he placed that thing, and he delivered an absolute dime. And, I was wrong on Cam, and I'll be the first one with egg all over my face. But, I think it's not as big an indictment on the Lions. They kind of, once another team, they are what they are. But seeing Cam drive that ball through, seeing him spinning it just right through windows, that's the Cam we knew. He's even running the ball even more. So, that was not only impressive outing, but they're doing that without their all-pro center, Ryan Khalil. So I think this turnaround by the Carolina's offense, in particular Cam, is definitely real.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of burned me in this game, Darryl Worley was questionable, Thomas Davis was questionable. Both of those guys wound up playing in this game, so that certainly didn't help me from a back seven standpoint for with Stafford going up against them. But to bring it back to the offense here, Cam Newton was very upset with Ron Rivera about not letting him run the football. And the last 2 weeks, Cam had 7 carries for 0 yards in this game. But the week before, he was extending plays with his legs. He was moving the pocket around. He was doing the things that Cam Newton needs to do to have success. And, because you stop a pass rush and you're able to do that. You've got ends and linebackers playing contain as opposed to coming on the blitz. If you give Cam Newton time to throw with a clean pocket, if he's got the arm there, he's going to make that throw. And it looks like over the last 2 weeks, he's got the arm. And I sort of wonder if maybe he was projecting a little bit onto Ron Rivera about, well, they're not letting me run. Well, maybe it was just a confidence thing for Cam Newton where he didn't want to get out and run. Maybe that shoulder was still a problem, kind of projecting it a little bit. We talked about it with Ben Roethlisberger, wanting to be that center of attention type guy. Quarterbacks, some guys have that complex. And I wonder if maybe that was the case with Cam. And now that we're seeing a confident quarterback that can go out there and spin it and can move around a little bit more now because he's got the arm talent to throw on the run. He feels like his arm is healthy enough to do that. Maybe this is a legit thing. Maybe this is something where we need to reevaluate Carolina here going forward. They're a surprising 4-1 team to me. I didn't expect a whole lot from them coming into the season. I certainly didn't expect a whole lot from Cam. Now all of a sudden you got this short week. If Cam's healthy, we'll see what kind of turnaround he's got. You mentioned some of the problems that the Eagles have been having, particularly at left tackle and at corner. Those are not good problems to have all of a sudden when you face Carolina.
Oh, yeah, and 100% Cam is a lot to deal with those on the ground. He is still deadly, and I think you are right. It's the shoulder that prevented him from going full bore, and he also had the ankle issue too. And yeah, this is a guy that loves attention. Anybody that dresses like that really loves me some me.
All right, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs here. They hung 42 on the Houston Texans. Obviously, Houston Texans had some significant losses in this game. J.J. Watt being the biggest, and you can't help but feel awful, absolutely awful for J.J. Watt, who by all accounts is one of the best dudes, not just in the NFL, but on the planet. And, of course, he goes down. His season's over. Merciless also going out in this game for Houston. Alex Smith, efficient. Not a big surprise there. 29 of 37, 324, 3 touchdowns. Only sacked once, and it was only a 1-yard loss. Kareem Hunt cracking the century mark again. 3.7 yards per carry, so he's a lot less explosive than he usually is. But, Kareem Hunt dude's on a mission.
I think he's going to break the rookie rushing record. He's still on pace to do that. I did the numbers. I guess he's on the pace with 1,948 yards, which would be just short of the 2,000 marker. But I still think he's going to approach the 2,000. How well he fits this scheme, and Andy Reid. We talked about his offense, how he's not only changed it around certain guys like Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and so many different things he's open, but I think Kareem Hunt allows them to do that. When you've just got that guy you can rely on, it's just similar to Fournette, and the first guy's not going to bring him down. He's just that thick of a kid, just so hard to get down to the ground, and he's also no slouch in the receiving game. I think that's why he's really the perfect fit for Andy Reid and how much he uses those backs. But I think the best part is there's not a lot of weakness outside of the game. And the only downside where he might not get the 2,000 is there's still some stuff in the play. He is a rookie, so even last night he was not on the field. A lot of that 2-minute offense. So probably 2 reasons there. He's a little limited on the playbook. Maybe they didn't want to give him this much exactly and what exactly he can take mentally, but also how reliable. I think he's a good pass blocker, but clearly they were trusting Charkandrick West a little bit more there, so that might have to temper my expectations. But yeah, I'm calling it now. I think he's going to get that 2,000. There's going to be some compiler games coming up. They've got the Raiders twice still. The Chargers gave up 172 to him, so he gets to play that again. The interesting games are going to be Denver. All right, those 2 games against Denver's rush defense. that's where the rubber's going to meet the road. But, yeah, I'm not only officially on that Cream Hunt bandwagon, Adam, he's in all my dynasty teams. I've already watched too much action, so been driving the bus fantasy-wise, but it's just so nice to see it. It's just all kind of coming to fruition from the kid out of Toledo. And, yeah, that's for a guy that loves the Mac, it couldn't have happened to a better kid. He's kind of the real deal.
One other game I want to ask you about, I know this one's not on your list. Maybe you haven't had a chance to watch this one yet, but the Seahawks and Rams. So Seattle wins this game 16-10, but the Rams outgained the Seahawks 375 to 241. They only had 5 more total plays than the Seahawks, 5.3 yards per play to 3.7 yards per play. Of course, Jared Goff wasn't as good as he has been here throughout the season, 22 of 47, threw for 288 yards, but also threw a couple of interceptions. What do you think the perception is going forward about both of these teams? I mean, Seattle won. They were a slight dog. They won, but they didn't play all that well here in this one. And then, of course, the Rams in this spot were the better team, but weren't able to come away with the victory, couldn't execute one of those whole you have to learn how to win types of things. How do you think that this game is perceived here going forward?
Oh, it's the Rams back to earth, and the Seattle Seahawks win a tight game because they're the Seahawks. But I would still look at the Seahawks roster as having some holes. The defense also just emotionally not hearing good things out of Cliff Averill, that this could be career-threatening, that stinger and neck injury that he got, and it sure didn't look good in the last game. But I didn't get to watch a ton of this, but I would, once again, just slow your roll on the Seahawks being back if you're thinking that way. And also, yes, the Rams are a little bit back down to earth. They played a wicked front seven. Todd Gurley didn't get the openings that he got in previous games. And Sammy Watkins, not even like that injury where he's at health-wise. I think that's still something to monitor. But I like what I've seen out of the Rams. I think this is just one of those tough divisional matchups. I mean, Seahawks-Rams has always pretty much been a slobber knocker, and 10-16, I think that kind of fit the bill, and better days ahead for the Rams and not so fast Seahawks is what I'm thinking.
I'll tell you what, this is why it's so important to look at box scores. The Rams were 0 for 4 in the red zone at scoring touchdowns. So they had 4 trips to Seattle's 3, but couldn't punch home a touchdown. Rams turned the ball over 5 times in this game. The 2 Goff picks, 3 fumbles. And when you look out there in the betting market here for week 5, Rams and Jacksonville opens a pick 'em out there at Bookmaker. It's now Jacksonville minus 2.5. Rams making that cross-country trip, and we all know about that. But it's always interesting to see what happens here when you've got an upstart-type team like the Rams. They lose a game like this. People don't even seem to realize, hey, they outplayed Seattle. They had some bad fumble luck. They lost the turnover battle 5-2. Couldn't execute in the red zone. Not every defense is Seattle. I mean, Jacksonville's defense is solid, but I just wanted to get your take on that game real quickly here while we had a little bit of time just to see, what you were thinking about it, because it is one that, stands out to me as one of the best games here of week 6 because you've got, so many different angles to consider for the Rams and Jags.
Well, and especially with the Jags coming off a big game, that once again, people see that kind of score, and it's like, well, the Jags have arrived. Leonard Fournette breaks off a 90-yard carry, and it's like, well, that is the strength of their team. This is still an offense that is limited, trying to play mistake-free football, and Blake Bortles hasn't accomplished very much at all. So, yeah, I'd be leaning Rams, but I'd also be curious about a total. The Jags defense has really shown some stuff that Campbell has paid off in spades. Right, that really was free agency done right, signing there, and like I mentioned, Jalen Ramsey playing pretty well. I think, talented defense on Jacksonville, and then also on the other side, the Rams. This could be another, I don't want to say 10-16 and use the same score here, but 2 offenses that don't exactly have their complete act together. I'd be leaning Rams, but I'd be very interested in an under total, maybe like a first half under, because 2 teams, like you mentioned, the cross-country trip too. This might be a little bit of a slow start, and I just don't see a lot of points being scored there with these troubles the Rams have had in the red zone. But as far as the side, I kind of like Los Angeles and just playing off of the kind of zig when other people are zagging. Like, sure, the Rams just lost, but there's something happening there. Sean McVay, I think we could all agree this guy is an offensive guru. Sure, maybe not a great head coach, but he's turned that offense around, and that really makes me want to lean Rams in a lot of these games because there's still value to be had there.
Joe Everett from NFL Draft Bible. Joe, what's going on over there right now at the website?
Oh, just cranking out the podcasts and the scouting reports. We've got basically every day until the draft. The Big Boss Man RIC is posting the daily scouting report series, so you're going to see a new prospect every single day. And our rankings tab now is our all-inclusive ranking, so every single class is accounted for by position, regardless of eligibility. You're going to get a little flavor, some of the best players of college football when you go to our rankings tab.
You can follow Joe on Twitter at Joe W. Everett and NFL Draft Bibles at NFL Draft Bible. Joe, thank you so much for your time, man. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week, bud.
All right, looking forward to it, Adam.